Hey guys, DRIX is here. Do something a little different today if you couldn't tell. I'm going to do a React video. I thought it could be kind of a fun concept because, sometimes Magic is a little more fun to talk about than play. And I was kind of thinking like, well, okay, well, what am I going to react to? And I actually saw this video just today. In fact, it was released today by LOBBERT. Great PDH content creator, makes a lot of these kind of Magic discussion videos, or PDH specifically discussion videos. So you should definitely check him out. But he uploaded this video. You should be playing this staple in PDH, discussion number 5. And I thought this could be a fun one to react to because I have some feelings about staples and just the way staples have been getting in PDH, the plethora of staples, and just judging by the wintry background here, I think I know what the staple is, and I have some feelings about it, so I just thought it could be fun to talk about. So I'm going to just play the video here, and we're going to watch it together. Go ahead and get cozy, and I'll just kind of give my opinions on everything, and that'll be that. So let's just hop right in to this video.
Hello, LOBBERT here. Please consider giving this video a like and subscribe for more Pauper Commander content.
Do that.
If you'd like to support what I'm doing
do
here,
that.
I'd love it if you became a patron. I've been trying to mentally gear up to make a video on lands and building a mana base in PDH, which is going to be a huge amount of work, and I started to think about the cards that influence how you build it.
Yeah, honestly, like land bases in PDH have gotten insane. It's crazy the like tools we have nowadays that we just did not have. Like I've been playing PDH for 8 years, 9 years, something like that, and like looking at the mana bases from those days to now, like we just have so much stuff to work with. So many fetches, so many duels, other things, and even beyond that, like so many utility lands, like that new Surveil one, and we have like all the ones that like sack to draw a card. We even got those Explorer. It's crazy. Lands are crazy at Common now. It's really something. I'm not surprised that the video's taken them a while.
And there's one that I started to worry would greatly increase the length of the video, and I really wanted to express all of my thoughts on it. It's a card that I think is underplayed, and that might be an unpopular opinion. The card is Arcum's Astrolabe. Arcum's Astrolabe is an artifact that costs a single snow mana and says, when Arcum's Astrolabe enters the battlefield, draw a card. It also has an ability with the cost of 1 and tap to add 1 mana of any color. If you're not familiar with this unassuming mana filter already, it's been banned in several 60-card formats, yet people still say that it doesn't do anything and exclude it from their decks. The fact that they're not running it is highlighted with Arcum's Astrolabe because if someone isn't running Snow Basics, you know they're not playing it, so it's easy to look around and find people that aren't playing it that probably should. I'll admit that it's probably being excluded from decks partially because of its price point. While the card itself isn't very costly, a full set of Snow Basics add up pretty quickly, especially when you consider that most players have many decks, and Arcum's Astrolabe can be in almost any of those.
That's when you just start writing snow on all your lands, and anybody has a problem with it, you just tell them to get over it.
Many players don't play it because they think that they have to have some additional synergy to make it worth it, but the card has been banned in multiple formats, and not only because the decks that were playing it were recurring it. Many just used it for the fixing. In Wizards' modern ban announcement on July 13th, 2020, they said, while these problem decks have taken several forms, their common game plan is using Arcum's Astrolabe to play powerful cards across several colors. As a result, Arcum's Astrolabe has become one of the most played cards in Modern. In 60-card formats...
Well, okay. They can do that because, first off, their deck is 60 cards, and they can play 4 copies of it, right? Their entire mana fixing plan can be Arcum's Astrolabe, basically, right? We can't do that, it's just a one-off thing you can throw in a deck. Maybe I'll draw it. I hope you're not like trinket maging out Arcum's Astrolabe when you could be getting like a relic or just, I don't know, anything more interesting. Arcum's Astrolabe just draws you a card. I don't know. I think it's a little weird to compare its utility in PDH based on its ban status in a lot of formats.
It simply brings the cost of playing decks that are 3 or 4 colors down too low. Only costing 1 allows you to play it with mana you don't plan to use anyway much of the time, and it's card neutral, so the cost to play it is very low. The ban announcement goes on to reinforce that the cost is too low by saying, Arcum's Astrolabe makes this trade-off come at too low of a cost, as one Arcum's Astrolabe can often mean excellent mana for the rest of the game without costing a card. In addition, Arcum's Astrolabe leads to other synergy by virtue of being a cheap artifact permanent, and it can be blinked or recurred for card advantage. In short, Arkham's Astrolabe adds too much to these decks for too little cost, resulting in win rates that are unhealthy and unsustainable for the metagame. Almost a year and a half later, this card would be banned in Legacy for doing the same thing. It allowed players to play the best cards across 4 colors, but the twist with Legacy is that the cost wasn't the life you saved in Modern by playing less shocks or not entering tapped like in Pauper. In Legacy, it was because playing Snow Basics dodges Wasteland and Blood Moon, which usually punish greedy mana bases.
Well, I mean, come on. You're not worried about those at PDH, right? You know, like, that's why I think comparing the ban list thing, it's a little like, it's not really the same. Like, you can't just say like, oh, this was banned in Legacy, so it must be amazing in PDH or a staple, or, you know, I mean, it certainly has its places, and it's a neat little card, but I think being like, well, it's really good against Blood Moon and Legacy, so I'm gonna play it in every single PDH deck. It's a little, just like kind of like a bizarre reasoning. I don't know.
Pauper ban announcement stated, because of the nature of the Pauper card pool, reliable multicolor mana bases have been historically a challenge for many decks. Arkham's Astrolabe greatly changes this dynamic, as the clear, easiest, and strongest choice for color fixing. As many decks would adopt Arkham's Astrolabe purely for color fixing anyway, it becomes quote-unquote free to gain additional value from it being like, a cheap art.
Look, if we could, it's almost like if we could take the 10 different mana rocks we're running in a deck and like make them 10 Arkham's Astrolabes, you could like take this logic and apply it to PDH, right? You could be like, well, you know, this fixes all our mana for us. We don't have to worry about anything else. But it's like, this is one card. It's one card. I get it. It does all the job. It does the whole job in Pauper, Modern, Legacy. It got banned for it. But it doesn't, like, it's not a fix-all for PDH. It can't be just because you won't even see it, like, 60, 70% of your games, probably.
Artifact and card advantage engine. To some degree, the metagame has shifted towards selecting for the best Arkham's Astrolabe deck. It then goes on to say how the decks that were already running Glinthawk, Core Skyfisher, Ephemerate, and other cards...
I mean, in these formats, it is crazy just how strong it was. It's awesome. I don't know. It's just cool.
Abused it in other ways. I bring up the Pauper ban last because the synergies in Pauper with Arkham's Astrolabe were so strong that I think it detracted from my point that the card was played even when it was just to provide mana fixing, because it does so for so little cost. I know that in Modern and Legacy, this was because they enabled 4-color decks, but in Pauper, the best deck was a blue-white Ephemerate deck that only splashed red for Scred. Having more colors in Pauper is just...
Where's... Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there you go. 4 Arkham's Astrolabes. 4 out of 60 cards. Like, that's a... You get it at this point, but that's a very different thing than having a copy of it in your 99-card PDH deck.
More costly because our mana-fixing lands come in tapped. I think that's reinforced by how much sooner Arkham's Astrolabe was banned in Pauper. It was banned around a year before it would be banned in other formats. To me, that means if we extrapolate this to a format with even worse color fixing and higher variance than a 60-card format like Pauper Commander does, the bar must be pretty low for how many colors you need to be running to justify playing Arkham's Astrolabe. As Wizards put it in the Modern ban announcement, to have excellent mana for the rest of the game. It's
on the games you draw it. On the games you draw the 1 in your 99-card deck. Sure, it's pretty nice, I guess. If you're playing a lot of colors, you know, you have 1 mana fixer there. Okay, I mean, any like 5-color mana rock also does that. You'd have excellent mana for the rest of the game. I don't know.
It's really mind-blowing to me that there are 3-color decks that attest to being competitive that don't run Astrolabe. I really don't like it when people gatekeep competitive formats by saying this or that isn't competitive, so I wanted to make it clear that I'm not saying that if you don't run Arkham's Astrolabe in every deck that's 3 or more colors, your deck isn't competitive.
Kinda did, though.
Any deck that you would feel comfortable entering a tournament with is competitive. It just may not be optimal in my eyes, because I think Arkham's Astrolabe is optimal a lot of the time. Even 2-color decks.
Okay, that's like, you know, people build decks different ways, different goals. Everyone's a little different. But when it comes to PDH for me, optimal is not necessarily like the first thing on my mind. I think that PDH is kind of built for, and EDH is kind of built for experience, right? It's kind of built to have, honestly, it's built for variance. That's really what it's built for, right? I mean, if you want to just talk about EDH in general, I mean, you're talking about a format that is 99 card singleton. Your deck is bigger and you have to play more different cards. Multiplayer, which completely throws basic concepts of how to win out the window. And you have more life. You have more time for randomness, right? So when I build a PDH deck, I'm not really thinking like, oh, I need the most consistent experience every time. I'm going into PDH or, EDH by proxy, I guess, hoping it's a little different every time, or a lot different every time, frankly. I don't really need a card that's just like adds a drop of consistency to some games. I don't really, that's just me. I don't really think about that.
Pauper Commander should be running it. The cost for including Arkham's Astrolabe in other formats like Modern and Legacy is arguably higher. Legacy and Modern decks have access to real fetch lands, shocks, and duels, which they must balance to ensure.
It's not higher though, because they did it, right? It's like it's better than that. It's better than that stuff. So like there's no opportunity cost because it's a 1v1 format, right? It's Modern, it's Legacy, it's built to you beat your opponent. You that's your only goal. Beat the one person on the other side of the table from you. So it's not really an opportunity cost. It's just, this is what fixes my mana in the most efficient method possible. So much so that it got banned. Opportunity cost, I think, is a little different in a multiplayer format where you never, ever, ever know what you actually need, right? You could argue taking one, like, other potentially useful card out for something that just draws you one of your other 98 cards could be worse. It could be a bigger opportunity cost than this, right? It's a little, I think it's a little different. I think the metrics, or not the metrics, but like the mechanics are a little different here.
Sure that they'll have snow mana to play Arkham's Astrolabe, but Pauper fetch lands only find basics, which will be snow lands, and there are even tapped dual lands that have the snow type that you should most likely be running anyway, and unlike EDH, there aren't enough non-basic lands in Pauper.
I don't really run the snow lands. I mean, as I was saying earlier, like there's so many land options now, it's kind of insane. I tend to actually gravitate towards like the gate package. I really like the gates because Basilisk Gate is crazy. And now you have that new like Cultivate Rock. Can't remember the name of it right now, but you sack it for 2 gates from your deck, one into play, tapped, one in your hand. I like that more. You even have Gate Creeper Bind too. And Heap Gate's great. I like that stuff a lot more than like, playing this duel and shelling out $15 to play a 1-mana draw spell. I don't know.
That are worth running to affect your ability to play Arkham's Astrolabe, because again, non-basics usually enter tapped, which you really want to limit, and even if the non-basic lands Pauper has access to enter untapped, they usually produce colorless mana. Bringing that back to how it relates to 2-color decks, most 2-color decks run between 6 and 10 tapped lands, and if Arkham's Astrolabe can justify cutting 1 additional tap land, that's a big victory.
6 and 10?
60 card formats also...
Wait, 6 and 10? Isn't that a bit much? Do you really need that much? I think that's a bit much. I should look at some of my deck lists, but that sounds a little high. 6 to 10 duels? I mean, you got your fetches, you got... I don't know, though. That sounds high. It just sounds high to me. Whatever.
2-color decks. Most 2-color decks run between 6 and 10 tapped lands, and if 10. Arkham's Astrolabe can justify cutting 1 additional tap land, that's a big victory. 60 card formats also...
Does he mean, like, cut a duel for a basic snow land? I'm assuming that's what he means. I'm hoping he's not saying, like, cut a land and put in Arkham's Astrolabe. That would be... It's not a land, right? It's not a land. It's not going to be your land drop for the turn. So I would hope that you would, still want to make your land drops. And sure, this draws you a card. Maybe it'll draw you a land. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I'm going to assume he's talking about taking a tapped duel out and adding a snow basic because it supports Arkham's Astrolabe all the same, I suppose. Though it's like, you're talking about like 2-card combos, right? You're like, well, I can play all these basics because there's a single card in my deck that fixes my mana. Like, that seems a little... whatever. If he's just talking about 1 tap land for the Arkham's Astrolabe, I guess that's fair. Whatever.
Also end a lot quicker than most Pauper Commander games, so when players think that it's a waste of mana, I really wonder how they think that Modern and Legacy players can justify it, but they can't. If you compare Arkham's Astrolabe to Pauper fetch lands, it acts more like a dual land than a basic, because if you're forced to tap down...
I wouldn't be complaining about it costing you mana for the turn or whatever. I don't think that's a good argument either against running it.
Single mana source, Arkham's Astrolabe lets you filter into any color, and even lets you use a colorless source to do it. Yeah. It can also be played on the same turn that you play another land, which makes it even better than a tapped fetch land. I've even considered putting Arkham's Astrolabe in some monocolor decks because I'm running a lot of colorless sources, and I know that I'm going to have some very color-intensive turns, especially in...
Well, you know what Mindstone doesn't cast? Arkham's Astrolabe. You need Snowman or that, buddy. So any thoughts of going like turn 2 Mindstone into Arkham's Astrolabe? That's not going to work.
Black, where Crypt Rats and Pestilence are extremely common and directly reward you for having perfect mana. And if that's my stance for how strong Arkham's Astrolabe can be in a monocolor deck with Crypt Rats and Pestilence, you should be able to figure out what I think about 2-color decks that run these sweepers and not Arkham's Astrolabe. Black also has a lot of other powerful cards that can sacrifice artifacts for value, such as Costly Plunder, Reckoner's Bargain, Deadly Dispute, and Fanatical Offering, where Arkham's Astrolabe being a cheap card-neutral artifact turns straight into cards in your hand. Importantly, all of these spells are instant, which allows for even more value if you're sacrificing chump blockers, and it allows you to hold up in...
Okay. I think I have a few things to say here. So, yeah, okay, it's a chintzy little artifact you can sack to these cards. But, like, is that a good thing? You know, I feel like a lot of people will say that, like, oh, it's sack fodder. It's great because it's just like, oh, you can just sacrifice it because you don't care about it. Like, I don't really think that's like a justification for it being in your deck, though. Honestly, I think it's kind of the opposite, right? Like, for instance, in Pokemon, this is a little bit of a tangent, but in Pokemon, there are a lot of trainer cards. I guess they're called item cards. They're kind of like instant sorceries. You like play them from your hand and they do something. A lot of them, as an additional cost, have you discard a card or discard 2 cards. They'd be like, as an additional cost, discard 2 cards and you get to search your deck for a Pokemon, or discard 2 cards and you get to like get any card back from your discard pile or something like that, right? A lot of people will build deck lists with cards like that, and they'll have like this one card in their deck that's like maybe kind of a silver bullet, or maybe it's more like a toolboxy type thing, and they'll say like, yeah, you know, most of the time I don't even want it, but it's great discard fodder, right? It's great because you can just throw it out because you don't care about it. And a lot of people will kind of like go against that because, you know, I don't really think that you should just be running cards because like, oh, I don't care if I get rid of it. I think every card in your deck should be like painful to discard. Like, oh, I really want to use this, but I need to like Deadly Dispute something. I need to, you know, draw more cards or something. Like, I don't really think you want cards in your deck that are just like, oh, you can just throw it out though. You don't actually care about it. Like, I get that it replaces itself, but like, I think he just said, like, you don't want to use it on chump blockers or something, right? Isn't that the like whole idea of these? Like, you block the Olamog's Crusher and then you Deadly Dispute in response. Like, that's where they're best to me. Like, to me, I want to cast these on cards that do something when they die, first off, or cards I will really care about but are dying anyways to a removal spell or something, right? Like, I don't want to necessarily be that excited to like cast Arkham's Astrolabe and then Costly Plunder, right? Like, that's like, it's a 2-card combo to draw 3 cards. Like, is that really that exciting? Like, some 2-card combos win you the game. I don't know if it's like, I don't know. Like, I never really agree with this argument of like, oh, this is just like some junk I'll sack later. Like, don't play it then. It's junk. Right? It's junk. I don't know.
Interaction. Black also has the most powerful equipment in Pauper, one so powerful that it's been banned since the inception of 60-card Pauper. Cranial Plating. Cranial Plating doesn't need a lot of help to allow you to deal some...
Do you run this in like every black deck? Do you just like, oh, Cranial Plating? Come on. It's Cranial Plating. Gotta have it, right? Like, I get a lot of decks have like 10 artifacts in them because you run some Mana Rocks or your Relic or whatever, or your Arkham's Astrolabe, of course. But like, I don't just like throw this in decks. I don't even think I like have it in any of my mono black decks. I think the only deck I have it in actually is my, it's kind of a silly deck. I have a Jund deck that everything in the deck costs 2 mana and Cranial Plating's in that. But like, I don't just auto include this. It's kind of a specific card, right? Like, it's super strong, but like, are you doing commander damage? Like, specifically, it's good for that. Are you like really, I don't know, doing something to like give your creatures unblockable, give your creatures lifelink, something like that? Or like, because I don't know, this just looks like a way to draw like an insane amount of threat for maybe no reason, depending on your goals with the deck. I don't know. I don't just like throw Cranial Plating into decks, personally. That's just me.
Some serious damage, but Arkham's Astrolabe doesn't require very much from us either, and I think it's effortless synergy like this that is at the heart of what makes the best decks the best. Candy Grapple and Rowan's Grim Search allow you to sacrifice Arkham's Astrolabe to bargain, and each have very respectable abilities without it. If we compare other 2-mana instants like Candy Grapple to it, Last Gasp and Tragic Fall also give -3/-3, but last...
Are you guys playing these? Yeah, is Candy Grapple like taking over CPDH or something? Last Gasp? I mean, I guess maybe you're not playing Last Gasp and Tragic Fall. Maybe you're playing Candy Grapple. Black removal is like insane now. You know that, right? Like, there's got to be better stuff than this. I don't know. That seems like a stretch. Like, I think just play Obnixil's Cruelty. That card's nuts. Or I don't know. Play Mob. Play Murder. Play I don't know. Candy Grapple.
Last Gasp doesn't have an additional benefit, and Tragic Fall's Hellbent ability might not be as easy to achieve as simply having Arkham's Astrolabe or another disposable artifact or token in play.
Yeah, disposable. Like, are your cards disposable? I don't know. Like, I get it. You know, it's a whole archetype, right? Eggs type thing, or like aristocrats. Oh, these are crappy little things that you sack. But like, we're talking about staple, right? Like, yeah, if you're playing an aristocrat style deck, maybe you throw in the Arkham's Astrolabe. But just any old deck, I don't know. That seems like more of a specific strategy that it falls into. Grasp of Darkness. Hopefully you're not playing Grasp of Darkness. It's got to be better than that.
-4/-4, but it costs double black, which also just makes me want to slap Arkham's Astrolabe into the deck.
Black removal is insane. It's so insane. Like, I don't know.
Black also just tends to be one of the most color-intensive pieces of the color pie. Rowan's Grim Search is also better than the other 3-mana draw spells in black.
This card is sweet.
Most of the ones with extra benefits, like the Scry on Read the Bones, or the Blood token from Pointed Discussions, are sorceries, which is a major drawback, so comparing them to the other instant speed draw spells for 3-mana in black, we find Blood Pact, which has no other text other than drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life, and Succumb to Temptation, which is the same, but more color-intensive. Rowan's Grim Search can be used without bargain, but it really digs so deep, just by having...
I also like that one. I think it was Eldraine Dark Bargain. No... Yeah, oh, he's talking about it. I should just listen.
Intensive. Rowan's Grim Search can be used without bargain, but it really digs so deep.
Oh, no, he said without bargain. No, I think it's Dark Bargain. I think that's like, maybe it's 4 mana. I thought it was 3. I can't really remember, but it's like, look at the top 3. You get 2 in your hand, 1 in the grave, or something like that. I don't know. Rowan's Grim Search is sick, but also it's secretly just another costly plunder, right?
By having an extra Arkham's Astrolabe laying around. Final Flourish only gives -2/-2, which falls short of Candy Grapple's -3/-3.
Do people play these? I don't know. Do people play? I don't know. Maybe, like, I actually don't know. Do people play Final Flourish and Candy Grapple? I don't, personally.
Sacrifice non-token creatures, and it gives the creature -6/-6 instead of Candy Grapple's -5/-5. But I don't think you need to be comparing these two to see which one you should include in your deck. I think that many black decks can support playing both of these. We've already named 10 cards that can go in almost any black deck. 5 draw spells, 2 targeted removal spells, and 2 sweepers. Add about 10 mana rocks, Arkham's Astrolabe, and some other solid cards like Tithing Blade and Blood Fountain, and we're already 23 cards into the deck, and we don't even know what the commander is yet.
Yeah.
Which makes me think...
Is that something people get excited about? This is kind of the crux of, like, I guess the issue I have. Like, there are too many staples. You're talking about 20 whatever cards that are staples, or like just like a given to put it in. Like, oh well, you gotta run all the Deadly Disputes. Well, there's like 15 of them now, but you gotta run all of them. I mean, they're all so good. And removal in black, oh my god, don't even get me started. There's like 10 good ones. You gotta play all of those. Pestilence, Crypt Rats, Grey Merchant. You gotta have Grey Merchant. Oh my god, can you imagine a black deck without Grey Merchant? Tithing Blade's a new card. Oh god, gotta have Tithing Blade. Oh my god, it kills creatures. It's such a good removal spell. Blood Fountain. Oh wow, the blood token. Oh, it's so good. So many artifacts. Oh, and Arkham's Astrolabe, you got to be able to do 1 more damage with Crypt Rats or Pestilence. You got to have that. Oh, what? Oh, your deck's full? Oh, you're out of room already? Okay, well, you know, luckily you don't have to like look into the black color identity and like find anything interesting. You can just play 30 removal spells and 30 mana rocks and 30 Deadly Disputes, and there's your deck. Isn't that exciting? Like, you know, like I said, at its core, I feel like EDH was designed for variance, right? It was designed to make situations or games less consistent, right? and having 10 copies of cards that are functionally reprints, and like the same 5 staples. I mean, black is one of the worst colors for this, but still, is like the antithesis of it. I mean, people find their own fun, whatever, but like, you could just play modern. Like, those decks are pretty consistent, you know, like they were so consistent that Arkham's Astrolabe got banned. But like, I don't know, it's not just that, like, okay, so it's not just the variants too, though. It's also like giving weird cards a chance to shine, right? That was kind of the other side of it. That's my understanding of like what was so exciting about EDH was like, there's all these weird, less competitive cards that, you know, you could play in standard, but you know, you wouldn't really even get to play them. You'd probably lose too fast. EDH gives us a chance to scrape the bottom of the barrel, right? Find the weird stuff, find the little silt building up at the bottom and put that in the deck and see what it does. Just see what it does, right? And PDH is an even more extreme version of that, right? We're really digging. And I think 10 years ago, we were really digging. We were really digging to find anything that was like, you know, functionally useful to fill out like a monocolor deck. But now, I mean, this is what we have. We have like the staple meta. We have, oh, well, there's 30 copies of Murder, so we'll run them all. They're all good, right? Or there's a million Deadly Disputes. We get one every set now. Like, these cards, it's all running together, and the decks are going to become more samey, which some people might like that. I don't know. I don't know what people, you know, everybody's different. Everybody finds different reason to like a format. But, like, for me, I don't want that. I honestly, I'm like trying to roll back on staples in general. Just like, there's too many sign and bloods. It's like, there's too many of all these cards. I don't want to play them anymore. I get it. Like, they are what's at common, but there's also a lot of weird stuff at common, and there's a lot to be found there. I don't know. Let's keep going.
That black decks in PDH have reached the point that 60-card pauper decks did when Arkham's Astrolabe was banned, where, quote, to some degree, the metagame has shifted towards selecting for the best Arkham's Astrolabe deck. To be
I don't think I understand. What, I don't know what that deck had to do with Arkham's. Like, okay, the deck like likes to have Arkham's Astrolabe. It lets you do 1 more damage with your Crypt Rats once, and you can costly plunder it, I guess, and I don't know, but like, isn't that looks like more like a cranial plating deck? Whatever.
Clear, I don't think that the best deck in the format is currently a Black Eggs deck. The most popular and winning archetype, according to the data that Clay and Puzzlebox discussed in their recent discussion video, was combo. So you're probably better off choosing your deck based on a combo. Their data also shows that black is the least winning color, but I think that this archetype is one that needs more exploring. In fact, I recently combined this information to build a competitive Sphinx Summoner list that I've only begun testing, but it's won 3 of the 4 games I've played with it so far, so Black Egg seems very strong to me, but I'm not here to sell you an entire archetype or a specific color. I'm here for Arkham's Astrolabe. Even if you don't run these specific cards, Arkham's Astrolabe still adds a lot of consistency to your deck, both fixing mana and essentially allowing you to play a 99-card deck, meaning you'll get your good cards more often.
See,
there are also
that. Allow you to play 1 less card in your deck. That's like tournament 1v1 format logic, in my opinion. That's like, you know, imagine there was a rule change for Modern that said the minimum deck size is now 40 cards. Every single deck would be 40 cards. No doubt, right? Every single deck would shave the worst 20 and have the best 40 left. That's how it would work. And that's why cards like Arkham's Astrolabe are insane in those formats, because you get to play a 56 card deck. You could throw Street Wraith in there. You get a 52 card deck. Gitaxian Probe, well, that's banned now, but you could get a 48 card deck, right? They want to shave the deck size down. When I build a PDH deck, what I typically do is I basically get a list of every card I'd like to play in the deck. And I end up at like 120 or 130 card deck list. And then I slowly pare that down to 99 cards. Honestly, the last thing that I would want to find room for is like a cantrip. A cantrip that, like, I guess fixes mana. It's just not like, it doesn't really fill the spot of a mana rock because it doesn't actually plus you on mana. I'm not swapping a land out for this. And pretty much anything else, in my opinion, is more interesting than this card, right? I would rather play one more interesting card than 98 cards in my main deck, right? I just, like, I don't, like, I feel the same way about Gataxian Probe. Gataxian Probe I can maybe understand a little more in, like, an Izzet deck where you're going, like, Spellslinger, and it's completely and truly free, right? But, I don't know. I just, like, I'm not that excited to reduce my deck size in PDH. I need a 120 card deck.
The times when your opponent plays something like Ulamog's Crusher, Annihilator makes the defending player sacrifice permanents.
Yeah,
and I promise that it feels way better.
It's like, isn't it great how there's a card in my deck that I don't care about? Like, yeah, I guess.
To sacrifice Arkham's Astrolabe than a land. Fade Away also works really well with Arkham's
Hey,
Astrolabe.
I love Fade Away.
Whether you cast it or an opponent does, Fade Away is worded, for each creature, its controller
Such
sacrifices a
sick card.
permanent.
See, this is PDH, man. Fade Away? Are you kidding me? Where else? Tell me, where else? Where else you're seeing Fade Away? Like, this is what it's all about, man. Like, I found out about this card through PDH, and it's so cool. It's like such an interesting, like, matrix of choices you get to make and stuff like that. Like, I love this card. Then you look at this, draw a card, mana fixing. Okay. Like, this is so cool. Such a cool card.
Unless they pay 1. The important part of Fade Away is that if you don't pay, you can sacrifice any permanent, not just the creatures. So Arkham's Astrolabe can save you mana and creatures here. Speaking of blue, it also has Perilous Research, which is a strictly better costly plunder because it allows you to sacrifice a permanent instead of just a creature or artifact. This allows it to be generically good and slot into a lot of different decks. Blue also has Trinket Mage, which usually searches for artifact lands, spell bombs, or combo pieces, so it can also...
Come on, you're gonna search for Arkham's Astrolabe with Trinket Mage? This just, like, seems so boring. I don't know. I shouldn't say boring. Like, I don't know. I don't want to sound harsh. I'm not saying, like, Arkham's Astrolabe sucks and anyone who puts it in their deck's stupid. Obviously not. It's a really good card and, you know, has its place for specific strategies especially. But there's just something about, like, searching for, I don't know, mana fixer. Like, it's like search. You know, honestly, like, if you like Arkham's Astrolabe so much, why doesn't anyone play Prophetic Prism? Hey, it costs 1 more mana, but it's functionally identical. And you don't even have to worry about Snowlands. You don't even have to, you know, swap all your basics out, spend that extra money. You don't have to waste Sharpie ink changing all your mountains into snow-covered mountains. And you know what? You can play that off your Urgolem's Eye, right? You can go, boom, turn 4, Urgolem's Eye, into the Prophetic Prism. Boom. Now that Urgolem's Eye basically taps for 1 of any color and 1. Pretty strong stuff. And hey, then you have a 97 card deck. It's getting smaller and smaller, right? Like, why not just play that too? Like, it's hardly worse. You know, isn't this format all about playing 3 million functional reprints? Just throw Prophetic Prism in while you're at it. Like, I don't know. But yeah, come on. Trinket Mage searching for Arkham's Astrolabe. Just like, yeah, get the Spell Bomb. That's more fun. Bounce someone's creature. I don't know.
Fit into decks that aren't going all in on artifacts, and having 1 more option in being able to look for Arkham's Astrolabe with Trinket Mage doesn't hurt. There are also cards in blue that care about having artifacts in play, but aren't worth including in your deck unless you're making artifacts a major part of your game plan, such as Thoughtcast, Filigree Attendant, and Reverse Engineer. But I'm more interested in discussing why...
See, like, this is sweet. Like, Arkham's Astrolabe is an awesome card. Like, but I'm looking at this, and I'm like, this isn't every deck. This is like a blue artifact deck. Put Arkham's Astrolabe in there, no question. In fact, I would probably even run Prophetic Prism there. But, like, this isn't, you know, it's not like, okay, you're building a blue deck, you gotta have Thoughtcast, right? Like, maybe, but you're gonna want 4 artifacts when you play that, or you're gonna feel a little silly. So, like, it just doesn't make it look like a staple. It makes it look like a cool ad for Artifact decks, maybe some kind of aristocrat strategy, you know.
The average decks should run it, not just the ones that already have an artifact
so that's what he's
synergy.
talking about.
So I'd prefer to talk about something like Moonsnare Prototype. With Arkham's Astrolabe in play, Moonsnare Prototype refunds the mana used to cast it, although it's colorless afterward.
Fun combo.
But even then, if you're able to tap something else to activate Moonsnare Prototype, Arkham's Astrolabe can help fix that mana for you too. Mana rocks that cost 1 don't really exist, except for this, Springleaf Drum, and Soul Ring. Soul Ring isn't legal in this format, and is busted in every format it's playable in, and Springleaf Drum only taps for creatures, which is a huge drawback when there are so many things like treasures and Arkham's Astrolabe that are begging to be tapped. But not only is Moonsnare Prototype ramp, it's a removal spell, although an expensive one. It's at least instant speed, isn't conditional.
Moonsnare Prototype, I almost want to say this is more staple worthy in a way. Obviously it's mono blue, so it's only in blue decks, but like, you know, your deck, pretty much every deck, especially a deck with blue in it, is probably running mana rocks. This is basically a 1 mana rock in most situations, but beyond that, it lets you also sneak some removal in. I really like Moonsnare Prototype. This is, see, because this, like, it condenses, right? It condenses. You can say this is a mana rock slot and it's a removal slot. So now I can fit in other cool stuff and still say, well, my deck has ramp and removal. Don't you see Moonsnare Prototype? Arkham's Astrolabe, it's just mana fixing. That can pretty much just be your lands. And draw a card is the same as saying, like, I wish my deck was smaller. So, like, it doesn't really replace, like, big categories. Like I said, I wouldn't swap a mana rock or a land out for Arkham's Astrolabe. So what am I swapping out? Don't say Coal Hauler Swine. Better not be Coal Hauler Swine. That's all I'm going to say.
Be targeted by Counterspell, though. Moonsnare Prototype can also be searched for with Trinket Mage, which lets both of these cards slot into more decks.
See, that's a cool target for Trinket Mage. You would get a removal spell with Trinket Mage. That's sick.
Also serves as a secondary target for Ghostly Flicker that's harder to remove than a creature most of the time.
That's
so
fair,
it's generally
because
safer.
you do need 2 targets
Planar
for Ghostly
Incision
Flicker.
is another flicker that works with Arkham's
on
Astrolabe, but targeting it would be more of an act of desperation, since you mostly want to target creatures to get the +1/+1 counter. It doesn't hurt to have the option though, and I know that I've had to do it more than once before. In red, the card that works well with Arkham's Astrolabe that jumps to my mind is Skred. Arkham's Astrolabe is a snow permanent, so it helps Skred scale. That's not the strongest synergy, but Skred is one of the best removal spells, so you're probably already running it.
I mean, out of all of our decks, we definitely have the most snow-covered mountains in the studio. We do like a good Skred. It's a good card.
Snowlands, so you're already most of the way there to playing Arkham's Astrolabe. Red also has to.
But again, I wouldn't take out an interesting card to play something that makes Skred do 1 more damage. I wouldn't do it. And again, yes, you can sacrifice bad cards.
Allowing you to discard a card instead of sacrificing an artifact makes it consistent enough to play in almost any red deck, and Arkham's Astrolabe is great free fuel. That also makes it instant speed card advantage in red, which is pretty hard to come by. Makeshift Munitions is another card that's already included in many decks.
So nuts.
It's a great repeatable source of removal. It allows you to sacrifice artifacts in addition to creatures, so Arkham's Astrolabe is cheap and card neutral fuel. Red, like all the other colors, has cards that reward you if you include enough artifacts that you can rely on it. Some particularly strong ones that I want to highlight are Reckless Fireweaver and Penregan Strongbull that can deal a lot of damage to the table.
Both those cards are so good.
There are cards across many colors, like Core Skyfisher, Aviary Mechanic, Stockpiling Celebrant, an Indoctrination Attendant in white, Dreamstalker in blue, and an Invasive Species in green that allow you to return Arkham's Astrolabe or something else to your hand that can...
Are you guys just like playing these? Like, are you just throwing these in? Like, do you just like when you're building a blue deck, do you just like put Dreamstalker in? Like, well, come on, you gotta have Dreamstalker. You look at him. So 1/5. Like, again, this looks like an archetype, right? It's like a sub theme that would justify Arkham's Astrolabe, not as a standalone staple, but like as a piece of the goal of the deck, right? It doesn't like. I don't know. Like, I don't run Dreamstalker like anything. I don't run Core Skyfisher even nowadays. I might run White Mane Lion because it's got flash. And yeah, the other ones are like a little worse than Core Skyfisher, I think. So, you know, I don't know.
Allow you to re-trigger your enter the battlefield abilities. which is applicable
its
to a
own
wide
deck.
variety of strategies.
different, right?
If you consider how many cards you really need to support the strategy, it's really not that many. All of your creatures with Enters the Battlefield abilities support it, Arkham's Astrolabe does too, and Abundant Growth is another 1-mana spell that can be a redraw. What really elevates this strategy is when you include Journey to Nowhere, Oblivion Ring, and Alabaster Host Intercessor. These are very good sorcery speed removal spells that work best when pointed at commanders, because most players will put their commanders back in the command zone, because if they don't, they risk losing access to their commander for the rest of the game. And because they're no longer in exile, picking up these Journey to Nowhere style effects to replay them can give white decks some extra much needed removal, which is something I've been experimenting with in my Thraben Watcher deck after I made a deck tech on it. Recommission is another white card that is included in many decks that already gets better with Arkham's Astrolabe. This is another small synergy, but it can work if you're desperate for a target and are able to dump Arkham's Astrolabe into the graveyard off of Takacia's Dig Site, a discard spell, or any other random things that happen during the game.
Wait, Takacia's Dig Site? He's surveilling it? that's now that's narrow. Oh. Oh, Arkham's Astrolabe's on top of my deck. I can mill it. I don't even have to draw it. Oh, it's in my graveyard. Recommission. I can pay 2 mana. I can pay more for it. Well, I didn't have any snowlands, so it's lucky that I could surveil it for 3 mana and then recommission it for 2 mana. Oh man, I get it. It's probably, those aren't necessarily happening at the same time, but it's funny to imagine like running a card in your deck that is so fodder that you're like, what's great is if you surveil it, you can just put it in your graveyard and you don't even care. It's like, yeah. Or Siphon Mind, yeah. Oh, luckily, I'm running 5 cards in my deck that I don't like, so I can just discard those. It's like that's why I don't get the argument of like, it's fodder. It's just chaff. It's okay. Just, take the cool cards out and put some junk in so that you don't feel bad when you sacrifice cards. I don't know.
My point is really that Arkham's Astrolabe works with a lot of popular cards in advantage.
And like, is it? I'm sorry, I'm pausing way too much. Is it fodder or is it recommissionable? Is it so good you gotta have it? It's just funny.
Just ways, and as a floor, it's a very cheap spell that will help your mana. I also want to look at Arkham's Astrolabe through both a casual and competitive lens. In casual,
finally.
an argument I've frequently heard against playing it is that it doesn't matter if their deck isn't optimal, because it's a casual deck. While this is true, the reason I play it in most of my casual decks is that I'm not trying to optimize for power level. I'm trying to optimize for play experience, and not having colors and not getting the cards you need are both things that can ruin a game. Arkham's Astrolabe.
Well, I think what can ruin an experience is like taking out something more interesting to put in something that's probably going to draw you a mountain and then fix your mana, which I don't know. Like, I've never really had that much issue with like mana fixing in PDH. I do play a lot of monocolor, but even in my 5-color decks, I do have a few. I've never been like, oh, I just can't do it. I don't know. Hang on, let me listen to that
Not
again.
having colors optimize for power level. I'm trying to optimize for play experience, and not having colors.
Yeah, power level. Like, I mean, you were also saying this is like an important piece of the puzzle for competitive decks, right? So, like, isn't it more powerful? I don't know, whatever.
Not getting the cards you need are both things that can ruin a game. Arkham's Astrolabe hopes both of these things by thinning your deck and giving you excellent mana. In competitive, players more often argue that there's simply no room for it in the deck, which is hard to argue with a lot of the time because
That's probably more true in casual, actually, I would say. I don't really like get that into like the competitive casual divide, but like there's so many silly cards I want to include in my decks usually. So I always feel like I have no room because I want to try dumb things out. So like that's why I would have trouble fitting something like this in. Competitive, I imagine it's a little more methodical, right? It's probably a lot more calculated. It's like, well, I need this exact ratio of counter spells to protect my combo or whatever, right? I would think it would fit into the math of it all, or it wouldn't fit into the math of it all. I don't know.
competitive lists get streamlined to an extreme, and slots get tight pretty quickly. But I would argue that Arkham's Astrolabe should be included to streamline your deck further and make it as consistent as possible. Remember, this card was banned out of multiple 60-card formats, even Legacy, where it was primarily banned for mana fixing for too low of a cost. Truth be told though, there are situations where you shouldn't use Arkham's Astrolabe. For example, if you play something like Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator as your commander, and you play dominantly blue sources, the treasures that Malcolm generates can easily get you through a game, so the color fixing aspect of Arkham's Astrolabe may not be as needed. There are also lists that are tight on mana, and have synergies with hundreds of cards, so their worst card is still very good, so they don't want it either. I know that this is a lot for one card, but I think that the efforts are worth it, because Arkham's Astrolabe can go in any deck, so this video has a good chance of helping a lot of people. I also know that this is a divisive topic. Some people don't ever think it's worth putting in anything. Out of curiosity, I looked at the top 500 most viewed Pauper Commander decks in Moxfield, and 10% of those decks play Arkham's Astrolabe. That's a fair amount when you can—
I bet like 10 people made half those decks. No, it's great. It's great so many people build PDH decks.
Consider that many of the decks aren't running it because of budget reasons or haven't been updated since the printing of some of these artifact synergies. That's a decent chunk of the meta that think Arkham's Astrolabe are worth it too. I also looked at the top 50 most viewed decks on Moxfield, and 30% of them were running Arkham's Astrolabe. That's probably due to Dargo and Abdel being heavily represented in that group, so it may not mean much, but I thought it was interesting, and it makes me think back to the 60-card Pauper ban announcement, where people were selecting for the best Arkham's Astrolabe deck. Anyway, I've talked about one card for way too long, so let's wrap this up.
Dargo deck or the
Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you have a reason for or against playing Arkham's Astrolabe that I didn't discuss, please leave it in the comments below. Please also consider giving this video a like and subscribe for more Pauper Commander content.
Once again, please do that.
If you'd like to support what I'm doing here, I'd love it if you became a patron. Patreon shout out to Achu.
All right, well, there you go. Yeah, it's just something that I thought I could offer some perspective on, I guess. And it's not so much that I'm for or against you playing a benign card draw mana fixer in your deck. Like, go ahead. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's maybe it's even fair to like categorize it as a staple, I suppose. But I'm more just like, I'm getting a little sick of the sheer amount of staples. There's so many staples now, and it's just like, where's the room for the fun stuff anymore, right? Like, so many functional reprints every year. It's just getting to be too much. And I don't know. I just like the idea of having all these staples and then playing a card like this that's like, oh, you get to make your deck smaller. It's like, I don't want to do that. Oh my God, I don't want to do that at all. But, you know, and I don't want you guys to think I'm like trying to rag on LOBBERT at all here. I think it's a great video, and it's really informational too. There's a lot of good, a lot of good staple information for maybe a new player who just needs to see what cards are available to you in the format. It's certainly good for that. But I think the more you learn about those staples, the more you should try doing your own thing and try to make something just of your own creation, you know? Like, I don't think this is like a format that needs primers of like, here's what you gotta have in your deck. You gotta have this. Like, you don't have Relic in your deck. What do you want to lose? Like, I don't like that kind of stuff. And I think PDH is just so perfect for just like being yourself, doing your own thing. And the more cards in your deck, the more room for expression. So don't try to make it smaller. And if you want to make it smaller, hey, staple number 2, Prophetic Prism, bro. It's basically the same, and you don't even need to buy those Snowlands. Just throw it in there. 97 card deck, just like that. All right, I think that's about all I have. Let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. I just did this on a whim. I thought it'd be kind of fun. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. This is DRIX signing out.